Yo, it's the dude trying something out, and I want to share it with you. Let's call it rabbit holes. It's kind of like oats, but I got facts. It's not just me riffing off the top of my head about some shit that it might be pissing me off or things that I find, really interesting while I'm driving around. This is stuff that comes to mind, and then I dive a little bit deeper to it. And then next thing you know, I find out I'm in a rabbit hole and I need to get out. Now, depending on the topic, I could get pretty deep in that rabbit hole. And sometimes it gets kind of shallow. But none of what I'm digging into isn't anything that you can't find out for yourself. Some of you might have looked into it. And of course, as always, pretty much everyone that's listening probably has a better take on it or can have a better take on it, even a personal take on what it is that I'm talking about. So let's try this out. I feel kind of like walking on a different path here and just trying something out. And I don't know if it's fortunately or unfortunately, but I'm digging a new rabbit hole into something that's it's pretty deep. It's pretty thick, and I don't have none of this is going to be with answers or alternatives. I'm just spewing things that I've found that are got some facts to it that make or should make you kick your heels up and wonder about it yourself. And if some of this inspires someone to dig a little bit deeper in the rabbit hole to find out things, feel free to. If alternatives are figured out, feel free to. This is just a nugget to really help others think about things that I find intriguing myself. So let's start digging into this one. The first one here. Gotta take a drink, you know. I myself, I'm not even been. I'm around a lot of prescription drugs, and it's very important that I say prescription before that because it would sound completely different if I said that same sentence without that word in front of it. But what's interesting to me is that if you're around, if you're watching any kind of content or watching stuff that's streaming on television or television channels or anything of that nature, you're going to start to notice as you watch more and more and more that there is a ridiculous amount of commercials that are for prescription drugs, and people talk about the downfalls of some of these things that seem to be out there for your benefit. Say, for instance, first thing comes to mind is Ozempic. Even with the controversy behind Ozempic, it hasn't stopped the commercials. I think what's interesting is that there's a clear line between Ozempic, the product that is, and what the product is for, and what it's supposed to do, and the people that are, no other way to say it, they're abusing Ozempic because they're not using it, and it falls under abuse because they're not using it for what the drug was intended or for what the prescription was intended. I think also some people might scoff at the word drug being used because if you're talking about something like, Ozempic or other drugs that are supposed to help with people that have diabetes, then it is part of their treatment. It is part of their medicine. It is part of their means of lowering numbers or body modding in some sort of way, biomodding, I should say, in some sort of way to where it leads to a benefit. Oftentimes I get caught up in the fine print and the wording at the bottom of the screen that some people don't read, or some people do read and they feel like the risk is worth it for what they're likely to gain out of it. So possibly you might overlook the fact that a particular thing might cause uncontrollable bowel movements or diarrhea or cramping or seizures or blood clots or um, death or suicidal thoughts, which those last two really I guess I just really didn't think that they would release something with those definitive effects, and it'd be something that there's certain things that people will take that the ends justify the means almost. It's a thing where, okay, I run the risk of having these adverse effects or these side effects, however you want to call them, but at the same time, what I'm gaining from using this product is it's worth the risk. It's a high level means of weighing what you're willing to endure, and some of it, I admit that some of the stuff that I hear in the cautionary, side effects that are blurted out in these commercials and listed on ads and whatnot, I admit it is somewhat comical to me, especially when I forget what the name of the drug is, and I probably can't really say it anyway. But one of the side effects is, and I'm trying to remember how it words it in the commercial. It's an actual commercial, and it says, paraphrasing, it may cause swelling the genitals, between your genitals and rectum, which I've continually referred to, as the highly official human anatomy region called the taint. So they're saying, you could take this drug and it's going to help you. You're going to get the benefits you need to address the issue you're experiencing. But as a possible trade-off, you might get some swelling of the taint. And in no way does it sort of elaborate on that, let you know how much of taint swelling. I mean, are your legs going to be agape, regardless if you want to or not? Uh, that's something that some dude might need some clarity on. Like, okay, so what are we talking about? Cold day testicle, yeah, swelling, or something grapefruitish. Because if it's a cold day, I can deal with an extra testicle. They're not big that way. It's like people would justify that kind of thing. The possibilities of my taint swelling. Ah, come on, that's a whatever. But the reality is there, and there's really nothing definitive to say how much swelling that would take place, and if and when this swelling recedes. This swelling might not while you're on this medication, and if that's the case, again, it's up to the patient, the recipient, the person that's been subscribed this medicine, if it's worth it. I mean, if you have some random swelling in whatever area of your body, is it worth it? Let alone if it's something that sort of is in an area that may impede or debilitate you. It would if your taint was swollen. And it's kind of odd because you have, especially early on, you had actors that you could like say, oh, okay, I know that person. I've seen them on the show. The guy from I Heart Abishola, definitely the first poster child that I can remember for Ozempic. And, he had this whole thing. And that's where, like, a lot of that writing was on the wall in regards to that particular medication because he was promoting it in the commercial for his diabetes and lowering those numbers and the problems that are associated with it and the numbers that are associated with it that his doctor really wanted him to get on top. And yes, it does have some effects with weight loss, but the main goal was for diabetic treatment. But clearly, once you saw how he started to look after, um, this whole continual Ozempic campaign, it didn't take too much of chemistry or medical degree to kind of say how much of that drug is playing effect because he's lost a ton of weight, figuratively, not saying anything derogatory to this guy. And so I think that was like a low key green light for people to give it a go, check it out. Uh, there's got to be something to it. I don't have diabetes, but look what it did for this guy. And then you've got people that should never have taken something like Ozempic, starting to do just that, and the results that were hitting them was just so, oh, I mean, there's a level of things that go beyond cringe, and that was one of them. I used to think that there was like a certain amount of people that had to have an effect, an adverse effect, before it was listed. If one out of 100,000 took a drug and that one had this adverse reaction, then you really didn't have to list it because there was 99,999 other people that didn't have that at all. But I was wrong. Apparently, there's no number to it. It's up to the discretion of the FDA and whatever that effect might be. If it's something that's serious, life threatening, like you got to go, like it's death, or you have to go to the hospital, or that person, um, you know, had a gained a disability. Gained a disability really sounds bad, but you know what I mean. They're now disabled because of can clearly find that it was because of the consumption of this drug. Then it's something that the FDA encourages all of that to be listed, and then they come to an evaluation of what it is that they need to actually list in order for that company to cover their ass, liability, and the other stuff that most companies have to think about before they issue that. Some companies, they find a way to get around it, as we know, where there's a will, there's a way kind of thing. But again, some of these adverse reactions do get overlooked by the people that are taking them because they figure like, hey, no pain, no gain, or whatever. It's a small consequence for what it was. Like, say for instance, Viagra. When Viagra was out in the beginning, people would make these comments about how their vision would turn to blue. They would have like a blue tint over everything for a period of time, and then it goes away. But as opposed to that being something that people like, yeah, nah, fuck that. People thought, and mainly when I say people, we're talking about dudes. Dudes thought that's a small price to pay for the erection that I'm gaining by this drug, so I'm okay with some dune eyes basically for a little bit. And then, I mean, well, it didn't physically change their eyes, so scratch that. No dune eyes, but the vision had blue tints reportedly. It's kind of hard to. It can only be something that's described. It's kind of hard to share that. You can't really say, "Hey, check it out. This is what it looks like." Um, but it's documented. The other thing is that when you get to people that are like with Ozempic and other drugs, they find a drug that's used for one thing and then they abuse it because it also, by side effect, causes this other thing. Like say with Ozempic, it's weight loss, and it's not really a weight loss drug, but how it affects people by a side effect of sorts is a means of weight loss. So you gain these results based on things that the drug wasn't intended for. Meanwhile, that causes a huge shortage for people that are needing that drug. And they not too long ago had that whole thing. I think of course last year at some point had this whole dilemma where they were running out of Ozempic because so many people were abusing it. That the people that needed it, that were diabetic, were were kind of fucked, and their supply was running low, super depleted because of that, and they didn't want to go to an alternative because Ozempic was the thing that really worked for them. And I can understand that when you get to some sort of dependency on a drug, you want to stick with the one that you know that works as opposed to experimenting with others to find out and see what happens. That mentality got me into more thought about how there's every other commercial is a drug commercial, prescription drug commercial. Um, the representation of the people that are on those drugs became more and more apparent, where it was like this drug will cause, it's the overarching thing is that it gives happiness. And so with weight loss or with diabetic drugs, you got people dancing in the streets. You got people dancing in office spaces. You got people smiling and doing moves that just make no sense. It's like one big musical you're in when you're in this drug. So I'm looking and I'm like, okay, is some ayahuasca in this too? Like a little pinch of it just to give you that little oof over into a euphoric state. Um, it just didn't make sense that that would be the thing. But then I saw commercial after commercial, and more than just that. It's like, hey, come over to this clinic, and you got people that are dancing in these clinics, and you got people that are doing this drug or that drug, and it's all this theme of happiness. And I get that it's like, okay, you get your life back, as some of them say. So you're going to be happy about that. And of course, you want to sell your product. So, of course, you want to promote happiness in that regard too. Who wants to be promoting a product that is going to cause more depression? But if you read the print, some of those drugs do have the side effect of depression. And it ramps up where it says depression or thoughts of suicide. So you're now one actually thoughts or acts of suicide. So they list these things because that's been found in patients or people that have taken it. So again, they have to, by way of the DEA, the FDA, um, list these things in order to just say, hey, we let you know, and that's that. Which rabbit hole wise leads that person into now, well, fuck, I'm getting depressed because I'm on this drug. I'm on drug A. It's making me depressed. That's a side effect. Get it. Now you get prescribed an antidepressant. Okay, cool. Now I got this to combat that. What drug A was giving me, I got drug B. What drug B has side effects too. So you might have to get a drug C and or D to combat those side effects, and possibly an E to combat the side effects of the combination of A and B and D. But that's hard to keep up with that bouncing ball because you're just trying to address that first thing you had that was needed to be addressed. That was the whole reason you were taking drug A. But that's how things can get really out of hand, and people can be to the point where they're consuming a considerable amount of prescription drugs. So where I started looking into the industry of it, because you have to think of it in that regard. You have commercials, so that's money being paid to pump these commercials out. These commercials are then being pumped out within a certain time frame of the day because the audience is more into that demographic that will be the kind that are getting those. And I started trying to figure out, okay, what's the percentage, what's the difference per decade of prescription drug use. What I found was very super interesting. It might take that deep side because it's not really that cool. So the prescription drug expenditure in all, again, all the stats are from the United States. I'm only going to compare it to the United States, but some of the United States stats will reflect worldwide use. So I'll make note of that. for you. But when you look up like prescription drug expenditures in the United States, and you can easily go back and say, okay, 1960s to 2024. That's a complete year. Now, I was doing it by decade, but when it gets into the 2000s, it started, especially after 2005, it starts breaking it down per year. So in the billion of US dollars, the expenditure of prescription drugs, it was only 2.7 million. I mean, 2.7 billion in 1960. And I'm not gonna play the inflation game and say, okay, well, 2.7 then is blah, 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 now. Okay. I will just say there was a highly noticeable increase, almost three times that in one decade, and then almost a doubling in less than that. So, like I said, in 1960, it was $2.7 billion put into the expenditure of prescription drugs. 1970, 5.5. 1980, 12 billion. So, well, there's a pretty much a almost, well, no, it's a doubling right there. And then 1980 to 1990, it went from 12 billion to 40.3. And then from 1990 to 2000, it went from 40.3 to 122 billion. But don't worry, in 2005, it went from 122 billion to 208.6 billion. And after that, it goes up per year. I'll try and put all the sources in the description here, but it's pretty incredible. It continues to go up from 2005 at the 208.6 mark to 2024 being at it was at a forecast at that particular point of 463.6 billion on prescription drug expenditures in the U.S. alone. I don't adequately know if that is a fuck ton, but to go from 2.7 to 463.6, I think might get you close to considering it to be a fuck ton. I'm not sure. And I'm not going to, like I said, I'm not going to have answers in this. I'm just going down the rabbit hole. I'm not going to have answers. It's like, and why is that? And come up with, I talked to blah, 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 and they told me that. No, it's just something that seems so obvious, but then at the same time, the why is just right there. It just doesn't, it's like, okay, well, how is it? There's a noticeable jump, that you can see in a couple of decades and then throughout 2000s, how it's just constantly going up. So I started looking at this, like, how many people are on prescription drugs? And the first stat I came across was like, okay, people 18 and up. The Mayo Clinic found this out in 2013. They were saying that, yeah, it's about 70% of Americans are on at least one prescription drug. And this is for 18 and up, are on at least one prescription drug. And then more than half take two. And then 20% of those people are on five or more. That's incredible, because and I guess hey, we did better. One of the other ones I found, it's like, okay, in 2021, just I think it was from the CDC, 64.8% of adults 18 and up were taking prescription medication at least, at any time from within a 12-month period. Like I said, it was 64.8% aged 18 and up. By age, though, of that 64.8%, which this type of stat work is always kind of confusing to me because when you hear it, it's like, hey, how the fuck do you? But it's like if you okay, we got 64.8% people of within those people, okay, 18 to 44, you know, aged 18 to 44, 48.4% of those drugs, prescription drugs, they were on some sort of prescription. 45 to 64, 67.1%. And if you're 65 years old and older, 89.2 were on prescription drugs. Women were leading with with women were taking more prescription drugs than men, and they found that yeah, it increases with age. The out of pocket costs on retail retail drug use rose 4.8%, and so it was 63 billion out of pocket. So people are spending $63 billion to get drugs. Now that then comes to mind is like, what about insurance? Well, yeah, that boat is being floated by a lot of people in relation to insurance, and those people are paying their insurance, and then that's a cycle right there where you got someone facilitating your drug use by doing the drugs a little bit lower in cost or full coverage, but really you're paying them. You got numerous people paying for this coverage, but then some people don't have any coverage. So now what? So now you are without coverage, you're needing drugs, or you don't do any drugs at all, or you're getting it in some other way, or you're coping with your need for drugs with some other substance you're abusing, whether it's alcohol or illegal drugs. Now the fine line comes into play where you start to say, well, what makes this drug legal when it's having things in it that are very close or exactly like what you get on the street for illegal drugs? And I can't really have an answer with that, but yeah, definitely opiates come to mind. It is interesting, the whole opioid epidemic, because certain things become an epidemic when they're hitting a certain threshold. I don't want to get too deep into that because that takes me into a territory that I feel like really takes away from the focus of the topic that I have with this rabbit hole. But that's what rabbit holes are all about. It is easy for you to divert down another rabbit hole that will take you into another topic. And you're looking back going, oh, I wanted to know about this, but now I'm over here. But I will just say this. Opioids were around for quite a while. And when it hit a certain threshold of public awareness, that's when it became an epidemic. Before that, though, it was not really that of a concern. Kind of like cocaine and crack and other drugs that sort of are out there in use and applied, but then when it hits a certain threshold, it becomes a thing of where, okay, we need to take action on this. And this is something that is really, none of this becomes an epidemic overnight. Nobody really doesn't, not this many people are doing opioids overnight. This is something that's already been out there. But I'll leave that at that. Because to me, it was just more interesting that now the viewing culture with prescription drugs is so accepted and promoted that people don't really, I don't feel like people are really taking into consideration the side effects of this and the continual effects of it. And so that was the rabbit hole entrance that I went down and started finding out all this other stuff. But after reading those stats, I became very interested in like, okay, I know of kids and children that are on prescription drugs. So it's nice to know that 18 and up, that's your that's where we're looking at these stats. But what what about these? What about the children? That because I know some kids that will be ADHD or they'll have other symptoms of this, that, or the other, and people will have them on drugs, and this helps calm them, or this helps get them focused, or this helps, or your kids bouncing off the wall. This will help. And okay, it's a downer. Just call it what it is. Help them focus. No, it brings them down. Okay, let's just call it what it is. Anything outside of that, of a doctor filling a script, is kind of a street drug. But we'll give it a fancy name or medical name that sounds like it could also double as a planet in a comic book that a hero falls from. Who knows? But um, drug names are bizarro right now, by the way. So then I started looking at it, like, what are the percentage of children, child age, people of child age that are on prescription drugs? And it was interesting that all the things I could find, it was just this one study that was figured out that was done, where they was looking at kids 2015, 2016, and approximately 18% of children aged 0 to 11 years old use one or more prescription drugs in the last 30 days. Yeah. Yeah. And so, in 2015, 2016, 45.8% of the population used one or more prescription drugs in a 30-day period. And 18% of that was, of that 45.8%, 18% were children 0 to 11 years. 22% were adolescents 12 to 19. Uh, yeah, that's that. Yeah, yeah. With a 45% of the group, that sounds a lot more. That just sounds like crazy stuff, especially when you're thinking, okay, that was 10 years ago. What's it like now? You can only assume it's those numbers or higher. And they're saying in that 0 to 11 age group, 22% were boys and 13.7 girls that doing that. Uh, they have bronchial issues, central nervous system issues, ADHD medications also, and asthma. And those are the common uses, the common issues that these drugs were implemented on these kids for. Um, it's interesting because it's a thing to me. I can't help but wonder if you get on prescription drugs at that age and continue, what's the likelihood of that not stopping? It's just a continual into adult. Like, how can you ever phase out of that? Or is it continual into adulthood? And if so, what does that mean? Like, how is that applied? How does that get applied when you're an adult and you've been taking a prescription drug for the majority of your life and likely will be continually? Um, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Maybe people can comment and exactly on how that is or what that's all about. Um, I think that's a good point to stop. This is a good point to stop at the stats, but it's a very intriguing thing. I encourage people to look it up themselves. I don't want to be the one that's like giving you information like, yeah, well, where'd you get that? You can look it up yourself. Some of the stuff I honestly was looking up while talking. this whole rabbit hole format. I like to spew my findings as I dig deeper in the rabbit hole, as opposed to having a lot of prepared stats so I can just flashcard the fuck out of it. It's not doesn't really convey going down a rabbit hole as much as it should. But to me, it's still interesting because I guess when you if you especially if you're a kid and you grow up with that type of drug use, it becomes a common thing, and then you don't think of it as any different. Um, this is what I'm supposed to take, and if I don't take it, then I'm going to lose my shit. And then mentally, you're kind of validating the need for the drug because you don't want to have an episode, quote unquote. You know, but it's just something that seems like the uptick is really into more prescription drugs and more prescription drugs that link to another prescription drug use and links to another prescription drug use. And then next thing you know, you're on 3, 4, 10. And it sounds like it's exaggerating, but I can honestly say I have personally witnessed that myself with other people. And that's pretty much what got me to wonder about this stuff because I'm looking and I'm just like, fuck, it's like what you're taking, like part of your morning regimen, part of what you do every morning is consume 10 pills. How, why, why? And most of the time is that, well, the doctor told me that this is something that I need to take. So you just you just take it. You just don't. You just go on and take it. You just like, okay, this is what he told me to do, so that's what I'm going to do it. Now I know some people are screaming out there with this natural alternatives to these things. You don't have to take all these other things, but I can't really speak on that. Just like I can't really speak on somebody not needing to take ADHD drugs or not needing to take whatever diet, diabetes medication. I can't really speak on that because that's them, that's their body, that's their diagnosis, that's what they have to address. I don't have any um, authority in any medical um, capacity to tell somebody this is what you do and you don't have to do any of that shit. It's all no, don't do it. I know that some people that are into holistic approaches will have a plethora of different things that you can combine that will combat this, that, and the other of whatever it is that might be ailing someone. And that's for that they can lead that discussion. I won't. I honestly don't have the expertise in order to stand on that, nor do I have the expertise or desire to stand on that and have someone put their life in, you know, at the whim of whatever I'm saying. Eat this root and you won't have to take Ozempic ever. Do your thing. I mean, I can't really. I'm not going to be the one to tell you to do something else, and it didn't work out for you. You should have stuck your ass on Ozempic. I don't know. This uptick, I just wonder, like, how much of that is just the business is good, so keep it going, and you know when you see things like dope sick and when you see people in your life that are really taking a fuckload of meds and prescription drugs, it causes you to wonder what's happening in that relationship with the human body, medicine, a lot of biohacking, and to what end? Is it all a money grab? Or is it really doing any good? And if so, to what end? Anyway, I'm going to stop digging in this rabbit hole. I'm going to backtrack and find my way out and go do other things. But I figured I'd share this with you. So thanks for sticking around for, just digging around in rabbit holes with me, the dude. Thanks again for joining. We'll see about doing another one of these. I don't know when. We'll just see about it. All right. Till then, do some crazy shit for yourself. Have a good time with you. If you're a special motherfucker and a special fatherfucker, so enjoy that. Celebrate that. Love yourself. Because you're fucking amazing.